The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 199. Team 135 wraps up spring practice as Stauskas, GR3, and Mitch McGarry consider whether they will stay or test the NBA waters. That and more on this week's show. This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to this week's show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Spring practice came to an end on Saturday as the Wolverines worked out before 15,000 of the faithful. Now most players will take some time off and report back in May for strength and conditioning workouts, followed by voluntary player-only drills beginning in June. Michigan beat writer Angelique Chengelis, the angel of the big house, from the Detroit News, will join me in just a minute with her thoughts on Team 135. The last 2 years have been a great ride for Michigan basketball fans. Few thought this year's team would be able to match last year's success. Why should we have? Trey Burke and Tim Hardaway Jr. left for the NBA, and Mitch McGarry appeared early in the season, then underwent season-ending back surgery early in January. That didn't stop this band of Wolverines, though. Led by an always improvising head coach and the outstanding leadership of senior captain Jordan Morgan, we all experienced another season to remember and an outright Big Ten championship. Now we wait and see who stays and who goes. We might get the answer to those questions as early as today. As I've mentioned before, we record the show on Tuesday, and today Coach John Beilein and his staff will hold their final presser of the year. So by the time this show publishes later today, we could know what the plans are for Stauskas, GR3, and Mitch McGarry. If not today, we should know in the next week or so. On today's Michigan Gameday Extra, my guest will be basketball beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News as we recap this Big Ten championship season and another great run in March. First on Wolverine News and Notes this week, the University of Michigan Athletic Department, in conjunction with Penn State University, television partner ESPN, and the Big Ten Conference, have announced that the October 11th football game at Michigan Stadium will be televised in prime time. The conference game will be played at 7 p.m. and televised nationally on either ESPN or ESPN2. This will be the third night game in the history of Michigan Stadium and the first against a Big Ten Conference opponent. The previous two primetime contests came against Notre Dame in 2011 and 2013, both victories for the Wolverines. This is the second night game that has been announced for the 2014 season. Michigan will play the final game in the long-standing series with Notre Dame on September 6th in prime time. The game between the two winningest programs in college football will kick off at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time from Notre Dame Stadium in South Bend, Indiana. Additional primetime games can be designated during the early selection process by the networks. Coach Brady Hoke and Team 135 concluded spring workouts on Saturday with a controlled scrimmage at the Big House. Was the new offense installed by Coach Doug Nussmeier humming? No, and we really didn't see much of it. We also didn't see much movement of the line of scrimmage from the offensive line. So the worries will continue through the summer regarding the offense. The D, on the other hand, looked pretty solid. We have depth up front, the most talent we've had in years at linebacker, and a lot of very young but unproven bodies in the secondary. So in the end, it was a nice weather day and a chance for 15,000 fans to spend a spring afternoon watching Michigan football. We'll have to wait another 5 months to get answers to most of our questions, though. Coming up next with her recap of spring practice is the angel of the big house, Michigan beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News, right here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. With us on our Michigan Game Day segment this week, Michigan beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News. Great to have you back in the spring.
It is spring, isn't it? I'm not sure. I can't tell anymore.
Well, we're getting there, and of course, we're having Angelique on to talk about the spring game from past weekend. Spring game practice. Really, it was a practice, but one of the things that surprised me about all that, Angelique, I didn't realize it, but that was the first time in the 15 practices that Michigan had been outdoors.
Yeah. As we all know, it's been a ridiculous winter, and they started so early, too, end of February, and when we would go for meeting availability, we meet them at Glick Fieldhouse, and, we're waiting around outside, and it's frigid. I mean, there was no way they could practice outside, Mike. So that they even had yesterday was, I'm sure, a good thing for them, just to kind of, I don't know, remember what it felt like to be outside playing football a little bit. But you're right, but by no means was that a game on Saturday. It was a glorified practice, and then Brady Hoke had said that was his plan, about a 50-minute scrimmage and a lot of individual work, position group work before that.
Well, and as you said in your Detroit News recap of the practice, the game, the takeaway from the spring practice on Saturday, pretty much the same as that from last season. The offensive line needs considerable work. It was practice, but it was really hard to see improvement there, wasn't it?
It was really hard to watch. I thought it was a struggle to watch at times, and I know they were trying different combinations and trying different people here and there, and we saw Mason Cole at left tackle, and an early enrollee kid, and it just was. I've got to believe I don't suggest for any moment that Doug Nussmeier was trying to hide anything. Believe me, I think they knew they had to get as much work as possible. But I've got to believe they're going to be a little bit better once they get to preseason camp and certainly through summer conditioning. And they missed Eric Magnuson. I think he's a guy who's going to be a major contributor. But a lot of talking to a lot of the former players who were in town this weekend for the Bo Schembechler statue unveiling Friday night. They were a little dumbfounded watching from the sideline and thinking, okay, the line should be better, and it wasn't.
Well, I think one of the things I try to keep in mind, I was talking to Shemi Schembechler about this a couple of weeks ago, is that, practice started on February 25th. Mm-hmm. 15 practices, and yesterday's counted as a practice, so they were spread out from that last week of February until this Saturday. That makes it awfully tough with 15 practices to see a lot of improvement and continuity.
You're right. That's absolutely true. They did have those first two practices that last week of February. Then the school had break, so the players were gone for a week and then came back. And Brady said he liked this plan. He wanted to kind of get them acclimated to Nussmeier and get the playbook going a little bit, get the install going, and then let them have their break and then come back and really go at it pretty hard. And I do think part of it too this spring, Mike, has been adapting to Doug Nussmeier. I think the players, to a man, I haven't heard one person complain about it. They love his intensity. I watched him during the drills while the guys were stretching. He went up to every player, patting him on the head, whispering something to them. I think he's definitely what everyone calls a player's coach, and I think he tried to come into the spring simplifying things a little bit, trying not to throw too much at them. Brady says he installed about 85% of his playbook, but I don't think when you talk to the offensive linemen, I think they like the fact that he threw things at them, and then they took it slowly after that, working on different things that he wanted to install each practice, and not over-demanding from them, if that's a word, and really trying to focus on getting these little things right. And that's why I think, yes, it was hard to watch the offensive line yesterday, but I've got to believe it's going to show some improvement once they get to camp.
Well, as you mentioned, Angelique, Coach Nussmeier has about 85% of that offense installed, and of course we saw probably none of it yesterday.
Right.
Other than the inconsistent line play, which again is, I know fans are getting very nervous after watching that again, but other than that, what was your overall take on what we saw from the offense?
Well, Devin Gardner didn't have his best day, but I think it's very clear that he has separated himself. I don't think there was, even though there was an open competition, I never thought that Shane Morris would take that job from him. So I think he got better, as he said, through this spring with competition from Wilton Speight, a guy that they love. I mean, another early enrollee. I mean, he looks more like what I say, the old kind of prototype Michigan quarterback from the early 90s. And I really think they like what he's doing and how he's affecting Devin. And the same thing with Shane. And I do think Freddie Canteen is really going to be a nice plus for them in the fall. Another early enrollee. And everybody talked about him, and he's very cocky, Mike, but not in an obnoxious way, but he knows that he's pretty good. He wants to be a playmaker. He wants to be on the field a lot. I think Funchess looked, he had some issues yesterday, but I think he likes the fact that Canteen's there and maybe draws double coverages so he can get free and vice versa. And I think the running backs, I think that's a situation that's vastly improved over the last couple of years. And that's not saying anything bad about Fitz-Toussaint. I think it's now there's definitely more depth. And I think once Drake Johnson is healthy, I think he's a guy who's going to very much factor into the race. We're talking mostly about Derek Green and Devion Smith and Justice Hayes, but I think Drake Johnson's a guy who can definitely get in the mix and compete for a lot of playing time.
There's a lot of depth in that backfield, which is nice. We haven't had that quality depth. We haven't seen that in... I can't remember when you could say we had 4 running backs that you could get playing time. When it comes to Devin, though, just getting back to that for a moment, Angelique, last year he was handed the starting job, didn't get pushed at all in camp. And you mentioned Wilton Speight and Shane Morris and even Bellamy.
Right.
That's a good thing this year that he's going to get pushed.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think everybody gets better when you've got competition. And I know that's a coaching cliche, but I think it's very, very accurate. And I think Devin responded. I think the fact that he showed up the first day of practice ready to go off the injured foot that he'd hurt in the Ohio State game when nobody thought he would be back, at least by that point. I mean, Brady Hoke kept saying limited throughout the spring. And I think the fact that Devin, I'm not sure if he pushed himself harder to get back. The fact that he got back showed them something. And I think he's worked hard very much this spring, especially with Nussmeier. I saw them a lot on the field together on Saturday, spending a lot of time talking during the practice, and I think he's got a really good rapport with him. But you're absolutely right. I mean, having those 3 guys pushing him, that makes him feel. Even though I asked him yesterday, did those guys gain any ground on you? And he said, no, I think I did pretty well. I think he knows that they're there, and that's good. He's not one of those things where he's looking over his shoulder worrying, but I think he knows that they're there. And I think what Brady Hoke said a couple weeks ago is that now that he knows he has depth at that position, if there's a moment in a game when Devin Gardner struggles, as we saw last season, he's got an option. If he needs a change-up for a series or a play or two, he's got options now, which they didn't have last year. So I just think it's a win-win all around at that position, and I think Devin's the one who benefited the most.
Well, Angelique, spring practice, as we know, isn't designed to make fans feel better about the team. It always helps, but after Saturday's offensive performance, as usual, I think fans are going to probably read a little more into it than there is. The one thing that is quite certain, you can't get away from it, this offense is nowhere close to being what it needs to be come fall.
No, and I think if you went around and polled all the coaches around the country, Mike, I think they'd all say the same thing. I mean, they're never satisfied, but I think that we all very much believe Brady Hoke when he says that after seeing yesterday. And again, you're right. You can't base your entire opinion of what this team might look like this fall on yesterday's performance because, as you said earlier, Nussmeier, they didn't show much, and they weren't going to. And, it wasn't a game situation. So they just wanted work. They wanted their day-to-day work again for their final practice. And it didn't really come down to entertaining the crowd. It was about learning and progressing. But, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how you should feel about this offense coming out of yesterday's game. I think it's I can see why Brady Hoke said that. I can see why he's going with the approach very different from last year when he kept saying that he liked that team and liked their work ethic. He likes this team's work ethic too. But I think he's going to be very cautious about heaping any praise on this team because I think it didn't come through last year. Even though he liked that team, things didn't happen the way he wanted them to, the way the team wanted to. I think he's going to take a little bit of a different approach. And when he says he's not satisfied, when he says that they're a long way away, I absolutely believe him. I don't think that's coach speak at all.
Well, with us on our Michigan Game Day segment this week as we recap the spring football practice, beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News. Angelique, on the other side of things, the defense looks pretty good. They look deep
Yes.
in the trenches, plenty of depth at the backers. Should be better in the secondary this year, at least it looks like it. But after Saturday's practice, it's a lot easier to imagine the defense being much better this season than the offense.
Well, I think the best defensively play we saw Saturday was Charles Woodson on the sideline grabbing that errant ball, and then he posed for the Heisman. I think that brought back some nice memories for Michigan fans. But, speaking of Charles Woodson, I mean, nobody got a chance to see Jabril Peppers yesterday at the spring game. He's a guy who's coming in the fall who I think will have an instant impact on the defense. I think he's a guy that Greg Madison's going to want to work in right away. But with the existing personnel that we saw on Saturday, clearly the defense was, I don't know if it was head and shoulders above the offense, but it was definitely dominant. And I think a guy that everybody talked about, as they talked about Freddie Cantine on offense, Jordan Lewis on defense has gotten a lot of publicity among the players. I mean, they've talked him up quite a bit, and he's a guy who, talking to him, he's saying the right thing, saying, I don't know who's got a starting job. I don't know. It could happen. Anything could happen in the fall camp. So I think this whole thing about competition, everything's open, I think they're all taking that very seriously. But in terms of open positions, no. I mean, Jake Ryan's got that settled now at middle linebacker. It's a position move that he likes a lot, that Madison loves for this team. They wanted to have their best linebacker, best defensive player maybe in the middle, and they've got that in Jake Ryan. Frank Clark was saying all the right things on Saturday. I think they like the depth. They like the fact that most of the guys who are back on defense are guys who got experience last year, and they understand what a 7-6 season feels like. And I think the defensive players, they won't say that they feel like they've got to carry the offense, at least early on, but they know they're going to have a very large responsibility in trying to make this team successful.
Oh, absolutely. Coach Madison was excited. I saw him interviewed on BTN during the practice, and getting back to the Jake Ryan move, he just couldn't stop talking about that. He said, you take your best player, you put him in the middle of the field at that Mike linebacker spot, and he said now teams can't run away from him, and it makes the other 10 guys all that much better. And you just got the feeling from him. I guess in the 4 years he's been here, I haven't seen him gush like that. He seems to really like this group.
He likes this group, and in particular, he likes Jake Ryan. I've heard former players say that he's sort of like his pet project, that Madison has wanted to mold this guy. And I was talking to another former Michigan player, a former linebacker, the other day, and he said he actually watched a little film with Madison over the weekend, and he appreciated, this guy who played the position appreciates how hard Jake Ryan is playing this role. He says he's a natural at it. And he had not played middle linebacker since high school, but took right back to it. And a lot of really high praise for what Jake Ryan has done. But there's just a lot of nice pieces there. I mean, I think they've got. You're right. You mentioned the secondary. I think there's definitely more depth, and particularly at cornerback. So I think that I think they feel very good about where they're headed this fall with the defense.
Well, as we mentioned a couple of minutes ago, what the coaches get from spring practice, that's one thing. What the fans take from it usually is something quite different. But if I had to use, one word to describe, the vibe I get from Michigan fans that I talk to on a weekly basis, I think that word would be uncertain. I get the feeling fans are starting to worry that this team has so many question marks again, and yesterday probably didn't help them, and that's heading into the fall. Do you get that feeling from fans that you talk to? There's that uncertainty creeping in still?
Oh, I do. I think so. I think there was a general malaise after last season, and really looking at a team that didn't progress and more than likely regressed, if you really want to look at it, and just didn't look like I'm not sure what they did in the bowl game. It wasn't pretty to watch, and I think there are a lot of things. I think there's a little bit of a hangover from last season that fans are cautiously, want to be cautiously optimistic. You always are at this time of the year, but you got to wonder. You just got to wonder if the pieces are there to make this work. And you can't take very much from Saturday's glorified practice scrimmage, whatever we want to call it. And I think that the fans are worried, and I think that you can hear it when they talk about, well, geez, do I want to renew my tickets? I don't know if I want to do that. The product hasn't been what I expect, and I think you're getting a lot of that kind of debate. But you look at the schedule next year. I mean, opening with Appalachian State, then on the road, Notre Dame, Miami, Utah. I mean, I think they've got, with the exception of going to South Bend, I think that's a good month, first month of play to get this team seasoned and get ready for the Big Ten schedule. But, a lot of question marks, Mike. There's no doubt about it. And, I think for us to sit here and try to guess how good they're going to be, I think this is a tough – I think we've gone into other seasons having a better feel for what to expect, but this season is definitely not one of those.
No, you're right on about that. This gives the critics a lot to work with from now until camp opens in August. And a column that caught my attention on Sunday was Drew Sharp from the Free Press. He had a column titled "Young is Getting Old" as an excuse for Wolverine's failures, and he said that every other word out of Brady's mouth is young, and that Brady, now in his fourth year, is preaching time and patience, but both are running out. You get the feeling that that's the consensus, even though fans really like Brady, I think, overall. But you get the feeling that a lot of fans feel that way too, and this is going to be, I just feel, a pressure cooker of a season coming up for him.
Oh, it is definitely. I'm not sure we can call it a make or break year. I think it's a coach on a hot seat kind of year, though, for sure. And I think we know how the landscape of college football has changed, and patience level of fans is completely different than it was 10, 15 years ago. I mean, you've got to win. You've got to win now, especially a program with the tradition of a Michigan. And 4 seasons is he's had 3 seasons, and do you like where it's going? A lot of people don't. And so the 4th season is absolutely critical for Brady. I think, unfortunately for him, his 3 biggest rivalry games are on the road. I mean, he's got Notre Dame, Michigan State again on the road, and then obviously going to Columbus at the end of the season. So that's definitely tough. They could win 9 games this season and still lose those 3. And is that good enough? I don't think so. I mean, 9-win season looks great on paper, but when those 3 losses are against your primary rivals, particularly Michigan State and Ohio State, that won't sit well with fans. And, I don't know. I have heard him say, that there's a lot of youth on this team, a little bit more than even last year. But I don't think it's been every other word. I don't think he's focused on that. But I think he is acknowledging it. And I thought he actually stayed away from it last year a little bit more until later in the season when, you're sort of grasping for straws then about, why is this team struggling? But I think that he's got of this incoming freshman class. I mean, seven of these kids enrolled early. I think that's a positive for this team. And when you look at those guys who played last year, young guys, well, they're a year older, and they got that kind of that thrown in the fire kind of experience. That's hard to beat. So I think those things actually bode well. Yes, there's some young guys, particularly some of those guys on defense, but they got a lot of good experience last year. So I don't interpret it as Brady using it as an excuse right now, but I think he's pointing out the fact that they do have a lot of youth. And, you look at the roster, there's some youth, but he also says that a lot of those guys got experience last year, so there's no excuse for them to not perform this year. Well,
in general, Angelique, now that spring practice is over, you've been around for enough of these spring practices and seen them for a lot of years. Have you ever, in all of the time you've been covering the team, when spring practice is over, had a really good vibe or a good idea of what you're really going to see in the fall?
I have had from some seasons definitely. This season, no, I really don't. I think the offensive line, I'm talking to those guys, I think, talking to like a Jack Miller, a guy who's been in the program for a while, I think one thing, they weren't saying that they're glad Luan and Schofield are gone, but I think that they like the chemistry that they've developed. And again, yes, we can criticize what we saw yesterday, but I think just chemistry-wise, I think that's actually going to be better. And what Jack Miller said is that they've all sort of started to rely on each other. And last year that maybe they were sort of relying on those 2 guys to sort of tell them what to do and to create this chemistry. But he said it felt more natural and a lot better for them. And I think you go in with I think the things that we know is that Devin Gardner will be the starting quarterback. I think we know that Devin Gardner will work hard in the off season. He said he was going to do the extra work with the quarterback guru, George Whitfield, again. He's going to go to the Manning Passing Academy again. Those things can't hurt him. I think we know that the running game should be better. Again, part of that goes hand in hand with whether the offensive line plays better. But I think there's some good talent, and I just think it's really hard to say. I think it's a team that can win games, but can it win those critical games? That's one thing. I'm just not sure. Those 3 games on the road that I think loom very large for them, I'm just not sure. I think it's really hard to say right now.
Well, I think none of us are sure, and we're going to have a few months to think long and hard about it. Let's take a few positives from a weekend or a day like yesterday. Angelique, Dave Brandon and his staff have done a great job of making the entire day kind of an event and a family event, and getting a lot of folks into the big house that don't have season tickets, don't have the opportunity to see Michigan play. He's made it a really fun day for the fans, hasn't he?
Oh, it's definitely. And certainly the weather cooperated. That didn't hurt. It was a little windy, a little cold, but yeah. And then opening the new museum at Schembechler Hall, they're recently just renovated, just unveiled on Friday, allowing fans to go see that museum for a few hours before the game was a real positive. It's a beautiful building. It's a beautiful facility. The artifacts are great. The displays are really neat. And, it's something that's way long overdue at Michigan. And certainly the creme de la creme, the statue of Bo Schembechler in front of the building is it's really exceptional. And I think that was a nice thing for fans to be able to do. And then they had the lacrosse game afterwards for people who wanted to stay. So they try to make it, not into a circus, but they try to make it, as fun an afternoon as possible for the fans. And you're right, a lot of people can't get into games during the season, and this is one of those opportunities. You're not going to see a game, but you're going to get a pretty general feel of what a football Saturday feels like.
Yeah, and it was a good thing. So, and you're right, the weather cooperated. There were a lot of good things happening. So it's all over. We have a few months to wait, and it won't be long. The darn magazines, the preseason magazines, took the stands in June, or maybe even earlier this year.
Oh, I think even earlier now. I wouldn't be surprised to see one next week. They come out so early now, Mike.
Good advice to everyone who's enjoy the summer. It will be here very quickly, football Saturday. So our guest on the show today has been Michigan beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News, wrapping up spring football. As always, Angelique, it's a pleasure having you on the show, and it'll be a few months now, but we look forward to it. But we all want to enjoy the summer too. September will be here soon enough, actually, August 30th for the opener. So we will get you back on soon, and look forward to talking about Team 135.
And I look forward to that too, Mike. Thank you so much for having me on. And you're right, the season's going to be here sooner than we think, but it really would be nice to have some summer. So we deserve that.
Coming up next on Michigan Gameday Extra, Michigan basketball beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News joins us as we recap this great Big Ten championship season here on the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. With us on Michigan Game Day this week to bring some closure to another great season, Wolverine basketball beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News. Great to have you with us, Rod.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to come on and provide some insight.
Well, we just wrapped up another fantastic run. I think all Michigan fans would say the last 2 years have been incredible. After the game last week in Indianapolis, Rod, Coach Beilein said in his 36 years of coaching, he's never had a team so focused and so selfless. They were an example of why coaches get into coaching, to have an opportunity to coach a team like that. That speaks volumes as to why this Michigan team accomplished what it did this year, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and it wasn't a team that was overly talented. You would say maybe that last year's team was possibly a little bit more talented than this one was, but he squeezed all that he could out of this year's group with the bump that Karis LeVert made in his talent level and his skill set, and being able to get a little bit more out of Jordan Morgan as well. That was a guy who seemed to be on a mission in the tournament, and no matter what the obstacles or no matter what the opposing big men looked like, you felt like you would be able to go in there and knock down a tree or knock down a mountain for you if you needed them to. And I think part of that is just coaching and getting guys to believe and to get that extra ounce of energy and effort and determination out of them. And Beeline and his staff were able to do that this year.
Well, coaching and chemistry, and that's always the key for any team in any sport. They were comfortable together. They played loose. They were, we think, ego-free from what everyone says, and they really liked each other. They played for each other. You know, in this era of sport, that doesn't happen too often, does it?
No, because you get a guy who says, hey, I've got these stats, or in this case this year where you've got a couple of potential NBA guys where they're going to go after theirs. They've got to be on SportsCenter. They've got to do a certain thing. And we never got that feeling that there was anyone who was out for their own, out for their stats, out for their glory, out for anything else. And you saw that in the stat lines, too, where Nick Stauskas would lead a game, but Karis LeVert would come in and score 20 or 25 in a game, too. And one of the bigger games of the year, the Duke game, Karis LeVert was more the star. But even with Mitch McGary going down, Jordan Morgan didn't point at himself and say, well, hey, see what happened last year when I was hurt and he got his time to shine. Well, now he's hurt and I've got my... It wasn't any of that. It was more, we were going to do whatever it takes for this team to try to be successful. And I think that's what really made them a better group was, it doesn't matter who's scoring 15 or who's scoring 20 or who's making this basket or that basket. If we're doing everything that we need to win, then we're all going to win and we're all going to reap the benefits from that.
Well, coaching, chemistry, and the third piece of that triumvirate, I would have to say, is leadership. And for one final time, let's talk about the leadership, the willing leadership of Jordan Morgan and what that meant to this team this year.
I don't think you can put a measure on it. For as much as statistics and you can measure and field goal efficiency and defensive efficiency, there's a stat for almost everything, but there's nothing for the heart and the leadership that Jordan Morgan provided this year. Nothing to really measure that in any kind of accurate way. Again, just coming off of last year where he had the ankle injury and he could have easily just pouted and come into this season where Mitch McGary was a preseason All-American and just said, well, hey, I'll play my role, I'll be a secondary figure. But they knew they needed an older guy, a junior in John Horford and a senior in Jordan Morgan to really carry the flag for these guys, to really get them focused on something, and to be the reminder of where this program was when they didn't make the NCAA tournament in Jordan Morgan's first year, that there is something else to fight for. It takes more than just talent. You've got to have quite a bit of heart to go along with it. And without that, I don't think they would have won a couple of games in the NCAA tournament. They may have just fallen to Texas in that round of 32 game if they didn't have that level of leadership. Because you've got to have that good mix of talent and leadership to go along with it, and the chemistry. And Jordan Morgan just did so much this year. There were games where he just carried them in the Tennessee game and the Texas game, again, where he looked to be overmatched on paper, where there were taller guys, there were bigger guys, there weren't more experienced guys, and there weren't guys with more heart, and that was the difference in those games.
No, and he is going to be very much missed next season. As you said, you can look at the stats, and you can talk about a lot of other things, but it's very hard to replace that element in a team, that kind of leadership.
Yeah, and he's going to be, he goes down as tied for the most wins in Michigan history. I think it's 104 is that number, and 120 games that he played. I mean, it's just a ridiculous number. I think it's 140 games, actually. Just a ridiculous number of things that he's seen this program go through, and he's turned these things around. And like I said, he's the last one who's seen Michigan not make an NCAA tournament. And he talks about that. He says, hey, some of these guys they come in and they're more talented. It's a different thing, but they don't see what it took to turn this program from what Chrysler Center was 4 or 5 years ago to where it is now, and it's just emblematic of the turnaround that the program's made as a whole.
Well, Rod, when you look back on this past season, the team came in with very high expectations off of last year, then stumbled to a 6-4 start. When the Big Ten season started in January, things changed. From your vantage point covering this team, was there a moment or a particular game where you could say, yeah, that's when it turned around?
I want to say it was right between that Arizona game where they went 6-4 and McGary went down, and probably that Minnesota game and the Wisconsin game. Those were kind of seminal moments in the season where it was, wow, if they're getting these wins on the road without McGarry, and it's a sort of new cast of guys that they're working with, we knew Stauskas was going to be good. We just didn't know how good. We knew Karis LeVert would be pretty good. We weren't really sure how good. And after losing to Iowa State, losing to Duke, losing to Arizona, you felt like this was a good team, but wasn't going to be maybe a Final Four or an Elite Eight team. Maybe they would, if they made it to the Sweet 16, that would be a good year for them. And even at 6-4, it felt like some people said they may not make the NCAA tournament, period, which was kind of hogwash. You knew they had too much talent. It was just a case of corralling all of that and making sure they could be focused on one singular goal. I felt like when I was sitting in Madison and they won that game at Wisconsin, that was sort of okay, this is taking on a completely different look than any season that I've seen here, because they just don't come in here and win this game. And they won that game pretty easily, too.
Well, do you think now, Rod, the program can be considered elite, or are more seasons like this needed in order to consider Michigan one of the elite programs in college basketball?
I think you've got to run off maybe one or two more of these Elite Eight, Final Four type runs. You see what Kentucky's doing now, and they've got a national championship in the past couple of years, and they're going back to the title game. I think you need a couple of runs like this where you feel like it's not a fluke. It's not just this one class or a couple of good recruiting classes back to back, but that it's the Beeline method, and it's tried and true, and you can do it with regardless of the recruits that you bring in, you can do it with the same system. And you're starting to feel that, but the results need to yield just maybe one or two more. Another Final Four in the next couple of years, I think you put them up there with some of the elite programs, because Duke hasn't been able to do it. North Carolina hasn't. If you look in the past few years, really only Florida, Kentucky, Louisville, there are only a handful that have been able to do it. So I think one more really puts Michigan right in that same conversation.
With us on our Michigan Game Day segment this week, Michigan basketball beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News as we wrap up this fantastic 2013-14 season. Rod, when Coach Beeline was hired from West Virginia, I remember a lot of basketball analysts, fans around here saying, hey, it's a nice hire, but it's not the big hire a lot of Michigan fans would have liked. But everyone is really singing a different tune about Coach Beeline now, aren't they?
Absolutely, and I think really the moment in that was, I think 3 years ago when he was 1-6 in the Big Ten. He had a terrible start to the Big Ten season, and people were saying, well, is he even the guy for Michigan? Not is he going to be the guy to get us to the promised land. Will he be the guy to even get us past this year? And I remember writing something and saying, if you give Beeline his guys, give him his recruits that he has 4 complete years with, and he can really start to establish his own stamp, his own personality on this program, give him another couple of years, and I think this thing will work out. And I got emails from all over the place saying, you're just a homer, you're just taking up for him. He's really not going to be any good. And I remember just thinking, you know what, I'll just let it go because it's going to be okay. You felt like with Darius Morris, with Tim Hardaway, young Tim Hardaway coming in, that there was something that was starting to change. It wasn't the same Michigan from the previous years that didn't have that identity. They were starting to establish something that said, we're going to be a consistent team. We're going to do things the right way. We're going to come up with these picks. We're going to play a particular system. And once guys started to buy into that, he started to get the recruits that fit. He got a Glenn Robinson. He got a Nick Stauskas. He got a Trey Burke. And guys that had a chip on their shoulder that felt like they needed to prove something. Once he got a handful of those guys, then it really was it was going nowhere but up after that. And I think that's been the key, is really getting guys to buy into the system, regardless of what they bring to the table, buy into the system and do what they can do to help the team win.
Well, Rod, Nick Stauskas was back home in Mississauga, Ontario over the weekend to mull over his options when it comes to the NBA or what he wants to do next. And we know anything can happen in that process. But would you think he almost has to make the move after the season he just enjoyed? Because it's hard to believe that, coming back next year, almost having to duplicate what he did this year, that really makes it a complicated decision, doesn't it?
Makes it a little bit more complicated because it's just tough to come out and do that on a college level in the Big Ten on a game-to-game basis, and you look at what level he played at. It was at sort of an NBA level. What more will he be able to accomplish by coming back? And some would say he can come back and work on his defense. Well, defense isn't a healthy enough reason to come back and play another year at college. It's usually if you need to work on your dribbling, or you need to work on your shooting, or you need to work on passing a little bit more because you project to be a guard in the NBA. And that's really what Stauskas was last year, is we know he can shoot. What else can he do? Well, now he's shown that he can dribble drive, he can pass, he can play a point guard type position, and he can play a versatile type combo guard in the NBA if you need him to. Well, that's everything else. You checked 3 or 4 things off this season, and if you try to mock something up for next year, defense might be the only thing. Would it be, hey, prove to me that you can do it again? Well, that's not the way the system works, where you have to prove that you can do it again if you've already done it at a Big Ten Player of the Year type caliber. I don't think there's anything for him to prove if he comes back. The only seedling of doubt that there would be was if he just loved college that much and everybody just came back and said, you know what, we want to win a national championship. Let's all keep the band together and do it that way.
Well, and that's basically what he told a radio station in Toronto over the weekend. That sounds like that is his big decision. He's dreamed about playing in the NBA, but he absolutely loves being a college student and everything that goes along with that. So that is going to be, I think, the crux of his decision. Glenn Robinson III and Mitch McGary have to make similar decisions, but their NBA prospects, at least for this year, they're iffy right now, aren't they?
They're a little bit more iffy. For Glenn Robinson, toward the end of the year and in the tournament, he showed a little bit more consistency with being able to hit a mid-range jump shot, with showing some aggression and going to the rim and being able to score. And even on the defensive end, showed a little bit more there. I don't know if that's enough in and of itself to say he's a definite first-round guy. And in any of these cases, you want to make sure that you're going to be a first-round pick and not be a fringe somewhere in the late teens or early 20s type draft pick. For Robinson, I wrote a story a couple weeks ago about some NBA scouts who said that he would be maybe in that late teens and early 20s. Is that enough for him, and with the background that he has with his father playing in the league and knowing what skill level it takes, and would be able to advise him firsthand and say, yeah, kid, you're ready to go, or no, maybe you need to come back another year. It's just so tough to say because you're right there on that fringe. And I think if Michigan had won that game and made the Final Four, I think that would have boosted up his profile enough where people would have said, yeah, okay, I think he is an NBA type guy. And sometimes it comes down to that, not just the talent level itself, but if you can say a kid made back-to-back Final Fours, that's something that boosts up that resume just a little bit more than a championship game and then an Elite Eight.
Well, and for Mitch McGary, it's even more difficult because, of course, with the back surgery, he was out the bulk of the year, and it really comes down, if he makes the decision, he's going to have to audition and convince a lot of folks that he's ready to go health-wise in the NBA.
Right, and I think that's the key for him is he's able to do that. Even when you looked at him in a couple of games in the tournament last year, if that was an audition, that was a great audition, and you can say he nailed it immediately. What some NBA GMs and execs have said is, we want to see more of that. Just that 6-game span isn't enough, because anybody can have a nice hot streak and get on a good span of being able to hit some jumpers or being able to play well. Can you do it over the long haul of a season, which McGary has not shown yet? Now look at the difference between a college season of about 35 games and then looking at an NBA season of 82 games. That's almost double. So if he can't do it in a college season, what makes you think he can do it in an NBA season? That's the question that he's going to have to answer when he gets into these interviews and these workouts. Are you healthy enough to be able to do it for an entire season? And the answer to that is whether he's coming back or not. The other piece of it is he said that if they had made it to the championship game, he would have been on the edge of being able to play. And I think he would have just bugged Beeline to death if they were sitting in Texas today and he was right on the line and his doctors would possibly clear him to play, that he would have been able to. So that means today he might be able to work out. He might be doing things full strength. So when the NBA camps come up in the next couple of weeks, he's able to go and try to be at almost full strength. The only thing that wouldn't be there maybe is his wind. So can he perform at a peak level in these tryouts? He may not be at 100%. He might be at 70, 80, 90%. Who knows? But I think that's going to be the answer is physically, is he there? And then mentally, will he be able to make it through the rigors of an 82-game NBA season? Those are some doubts and some big doubts that I think NBA teams are going to have.
Oh, very difficult questions, and we should get some of the answers, at least initial answers, in the next week or two when they make their decisions. Well, Rod, it was another great ride for us all this year, for the Michigan fans, for you guys that covered the team, and we all have some great memories from the season, of course. For you, though, having covered this team so closely, what are a few of your favorite moments or memories that will linger with you from this past season?
I mean, just in Puerto Rico, losing to Charlotte, it was sort of how did we get here with Stauskas hurt and that ankle? It was really trying to rally around that and feeling like we can still do something. The losses at Iowa State, at Duke, and against Arizona, you were just waiting for this team to get over the hump. I think that the best memory is at that Wisconsin game and really starting to turn things around. We didn't know a lot in that win over Nebraska, at Nebraska, and that was the only game that Nebraska lost at home this season, but that was the beginnings of a couple of things. And the wins against Michigan State, too, just felt like, wow, this is really turning this program around. And you hear the conversations about, well, is Michigan catching up? Have they caught up to Michigan State? And in those wins, it felt like, well, wow, this is a different program. It's really starting to turn around. It's not all the way there, but it's really starting to turn around. And you could see the smiles on Levert's face and on Stauskas' face when they got those wins, that it was different. It felt different. Something was really different. And they may not be able to see the crowning glory if this team wins a championship or gets back to the national championship. All of those guys might not see it, but you could see that they had some little part in that, and just the joy on their faces and the joy on Beeline's face, that no matter how many of those wins they got, there was still more work to do. And I think Beeline's work ethic is probably the biggest memory I'll have of this season. Is we won the Big Ten outright. Still not a big deal. We're in the NCAA tournament. Still not a big deal. There's still more work to do. And that's going to stick with me for a while.
Well, even though this season just ended a week ago, actually, we don't have to wait long to get an early look at next year's team. Michigan announced over the weekend that Coach Beilein and the guys are going to be touring Europe this summer. And unlike 4 years ago, I think the NCAA is now allowing the incoming freshmen to practice and to play. So that's big in a lot of ways in helping this team get ready for next year, sort of an early jump, isn't it? Right,
and when you talk about the freshmen that are coming in, a Cameron Chapman, a DJ Wilson, a Ricky Doyle, getting some looks at those guys in game-type situations is going to be something that is going to help in moving toward next season. And let's just assume that Stauskas, Robinson, and McGeary all decide to leave. If we assume that, this is a different team in that probably Karis LeVert, Derek Walton, and Zach Irvin are going to be your main scoring guys. You need some time for them to gel and to figure out who's going to do what and how that all kind of works together. Mark Donnell, who's redshirting this season, is also going to be a main contributor next year because he can play some of that center position at 6'9", and they're going to try to beef him up to about 240, 250 to be able to rebound in the post and add a nice complement to what John Horford brings to the table. So you could have almost a completely different starting lineup, save LeVert and Walton, and you're going to need some time to mesh all of that stuff together to decide who does what. Who fits in this slot better? Which other complementary players do you have coming off the bench? With those freshmen coming in, I think they'll be able to get some time early. But again, it's just a case of let's feel each other out. Let's see who does what with which playing group a little bit better. And that gives you a kickstart into next season that I think will make Michigan one of the top 3 teams in the Big Ten yet again. Even if none of the other 3 come back, and all of this is kind of speculation on assuming that those 3 are gone, but if, let's say, McGeary comes back, well, you got another piece in the middle that you can start working with. But I think if you start looking at it just in a sense that all 3 of those guys are gone, it's still a bright future for Michigan.
Oh, absolutely, and I think most fans would agree with that. Our guest here in our Michigan Game Day segment this week, helping us wrap up this great season, has been Michigan basketball beat writer Rod Beard from the Detroit News. And Rod, it's been great having you on with us all season to bring your insight And with everything that we have to look forward to next year, we also look forward to getting you back on the show and talking more Michigan hoops.
Absolutely. Appreciate every opportunity, and you do a great job with this. I hope everyone appreciates how much time and effort goes into it, but it's a wonderful, wonderful addition to all of the coverage that we have.
Well, thank you very much, Rod. On Facebook this week, I asked the question, who should stay and who should go? Is Nick Stauskas ready for the NBA? What about GR3 and Mitch McGarry? Archie from East Lansing gave our listener line a call with these thoughts.
I definitely think that Nick Stauskas is ready. I think Glenn Robinson, the three is also ready. By the way, this is Archie from Lansing, Michigan. As far as McGarry goes, I think he's going to need more time in college. He's coming off an injury, so I'm sure the scouts would like to see where he's at. But I just, if he stays healthy and he's, recuperating like he should, he's going to have a terrific year for Michigan next year. I hope Nick and Glenn stay in school. Glenn's a pure shooter. Nick has put on weight, and he can drive, and he can hit the long range. So Glenn and Nick could both probably go first round, but I hope they stay. Going to college is more than just playing basketball. They're there to get an education, get their degree, have a chance for a national championship next year. What a rush. And to be under the tutelage of some of the greatest coaches, Coach Bakare, Coach Beeline, and the whole staff, Lavelle Jordan. I mean, it can't get any better than that coaching staff, and what an experience. Thanks, Mike. Bye-bye.
Thanks again to Archie for calling the listener line with his fan feedback. A reminder to all of our listeners, our listener line is open for your maize and blue comments, anything you'd like to share with us, 24/7. You can call 313-263-4842. I just ask that you leave your name, tell us where you're calling from, and then give us your opinion or your thoughts on anything maize and blue. You can also email your thoughts and suggestions to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. Coming up next, Wolverine Quick Hits as we wrap it up for another week, right here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW. Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, the pitching staff of the number 5 ranked University of Michigan softball team on Sunday held the Ohio State Buckeyes to 1 run on 5 hits in a doubleheader sweep by scores of 10-0 in 5 innings and 9-1 in 6 innings at the Wilpon Complex, home of Alumni Field. The win in Game 1 marks the 500th Big Ten Conference victory for head coach Carol Hutchins. In Game 1, starting pitcher junior Sarah Dreisinger went all 5 innings for the Wolverines and struck out 6 Buckeyes while yielding just 1 walk. She tossed the second consecutive shutout against the Buckeyes, following Haley Wagner's 1-0 win on Saturday. In Game 2, freshman Megan Betza struck out 10 batters, including 2 in the first, second, fifth, and sixth innings. She created trouble for herself with a hit batter and a walk in the second that eventually led to Ohio State's only run of the game and the series. The freshman settled in after that, facing just 10 batters over the next 3 innings. So the Wolverines heading into this week's action again ranked number 5 in the country with an overall record of 29 wins against 6 losses and a perfect 9-0 in the Big Ten. The University of Michigan baseball team fell to Minnesota 3-1 in the final game of a 3-game Big Ten series on Sunday afternoon at the Wilpon Complex, home of Ray Fisher Stadium. Michigan planted a run in the bottom of the second inning to open the scoring. Junior Kyle Jusick opened the frame with a double to the gap in right field. He moved to third on senior Cole Martin's single to center and scored off freshman Cameron Benedetti's sacrifice fly to right. Minnesota answered with a run in the third. It looked as if U of M recorded the third out on a strikeout and a tag, but the batter, Dan Model, was ruled safe. Model then moved to second on a throwing error and scored on Connor Scheffbauer's double to left. The Gophers took the lead in the fourth on an RBI ground rule double from Troy Traxler and a run-scoring single by Bobby Wan, giving Minnesota a 3-1 lead. Michigan had its best chance to score in the eighth as a hit by pitch and 2 singles loaded the bases with 1 out, but a double play ended that threat. Martin had 2 hits to lead the Maize and Blue offense. Junior Trent Skutnik struck out 5 in 6 innings of work. He allowed 7 hits and 2 earned runs and was tagged with the loss. Fifth-year senior Logan McAnallen had a pair of strikeouts in 2.1 innings of relief. Michigan ends its 9-game homestand Wednesday against Notre Dame at the Wilpon Complex. First pitch is scheduled for 7 p.m., and concessions will cost just $2. Heading into the Notre Dame game, the Wolverines 14-17 overall, 4-5 in the Big Ten Conference. University of Michigan hockey coach Red Berenson announced that junior-to-be forward Andrew Kopp was selected captain for the 2014-15 Wolverines, while senior-to-be forward Zach Hyman and sophomore-to-be forward J.T. Comfer were selected alternate captains by a vote of their teammates. Kopp, an alternate captain on this past season's U of M team, will be the 85th captain in the history of Michigan hockey. He is the first junior captain since Luke Glendening, now with the Red Wings, shared the captaincy with Carl Hagelin during the 2010-2011 season. The University of Michigan women's basketball team will hold its annual postseason banquet next Monday at the Jung Family Champion Center. The event will start at 6:30 p.m. and will feature an awards ceremony, a highlight video, and dinner. Tickets are $25 and can be purchased through the U of M ticket office by calling 866-296-MTIX or online at mgoblue.com. Space will be limited, so fans are encouraged to purchase tickets early. Michigan, which lost 90% of its offense from last year, recorded the 6th 20-win season in program history with a 20-14 record after reaching the 3rd round of the WNIT. Michigan set numerous program records during the past season, including assists, 524, three-point field goal percentage, .383, and rebounding margin, plus 8.1 per game. Head coach Kim Barnes-Arico, who now has 42 wins in just 2 seasons in Ann Arbor, was the first coach in program history to guide Michigan to back-to-back 20-win campaigns. Don't forget to visit www.gbmwolverine.com and become a member today. We don't have an off-season here at GBMW. Until football season kicks off on Labor Day weekend, we'll be talking Michigan football every day. We'll also have the latest hoops news, as well as the best hockey coverage around with Yostmeister. So visit www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up for membership today. Our show app is now available in the Android store at Amazon.com, the iTunes store, and the Windows 8 App Store. You'll also find us available on 2 free apps, iTunesRadio.com and Stitcher Radio on demand. Our fan feedback line is open 24/7 for your comments at 313-263-4842. So just as Archie from East Lansing did this week, we invite you to give us a call with any amazing blue thoughts you might have 24/7. Again, that number is 313-263-4842. And who knows, you might hear yourself on the next show. You can also email me at the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That will do it for this week's show. Thanks to my guests today, football beat writer Angelique Chengelis, the angel of the big house, and basketball beat guy Rod Beard from the Detroit News. Thanks for joining me. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone, and don't forget to join me again next week. Until then, take care, and as always, Go Blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!